I'm Nic Thomas. Welcome back to the Box Score podcast. I'm here with Mason, Mike, and Con. How's everyone feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm glad that the NBA is back. That All-Star weekend was super long for me. I don't know about you guys. I like that last week was super boring for me with no NFL football going on. That was pretty hard. I don't know about you guys.
What are you guys' thoughts on the All-Star weekend? Just, I know it wasn't our design topic, but I mean, just sort of an interesting thing to touch on.
Well,
I'll just say it. I mean, the All-Star game itself, All-Star Sunday has lost all its relevance. I mean, I fell asleep. I'm not even exaggerating. I literally fell asleep. I was going to go stay asleep. And then I think Terminator was on AMC. So I started watching that, but All-Star Saturday, I think, Steph and Sabrina. Make no mistake, the actual 3-point contest was very exciting. I think all the participants did a really good job. But yeah, the Steph and Sabrina-Ionescu definitely brought a lot of intrigue, and they delivered. It was as exciting as it could have been. And I like that they are really embraced, the opportunity to really just promote the game of basketball itself at all levels. I think Michael can relate. I know he's a very big WNBA fan. I like the WNBA, and I'm glad, right, that it's taken seriously. And I'm really excited too that they have already not even like hinting; they're blatantly saying they're going to do it again next year and perhaps expand. Maybe have some other, they kind of unofficially name dropped Caitlin Clark. Right? Dude, I think there are a lot of, players that would want to participate. I can't speak for themselves, especially given that the Warriors are the home team or the host team next year. I'm sure Clay will do it. Clay will do it, right?
That's gonna be big for sure,
right? A lot of people have thrown out the idea, so I can't claim it as my own idea anymore. But an idea of a tag team event, right? Like Steph plus Sabrina versus Clay versus Caitlin, or versus Clay and Caitlin.
I was thinking more of the Splash Brothers versus Caitlin and Sabrina.
Or that.
I thought that'd be an interesting one. Yeah.
Or that we can probably bring in Kelsey Plum into it, because it's in the West Coast, right? She can team up with Dame, right? I think he deserves an assuming he wants to, But I'm just saying, right? I like that, especially for Steph, and again, putting my Warriors bias aside, I like that he just really loves to promote, sports, especially women's sports, at all levels. Kind of puts the ego aside. It's just fun, right? And that's right. It's fun, but it's also competition, right? And in contrast, the All-Star game itself, I think they've really lost the concept of competition. But so.
Yeah.
Now that the NBA is back, who are some teams you guys are sort of looking forward to watching?
Well, yeah, kind of, since the All-Star, or since the NBA has resumed since the All-Star break, we've actually had some pretty nice marquee matchups since. We saw, Phoenix versus Dallas, right? The Clippers versus OKC, not within the conference, but Minnesota versus Milwaukee. So
Warriors, Lakers.
But as far as the teams that have kind of been in the top four within their respective conferences, top four seeds within their respective conferences, what are your thoughts then on those top teams? Kind of started to see them match up, kind of start to see their I wouldn't say playoff rotations, but at least their core, right? Their 8-9 core guys starting to materialize. What were your thoughts on the Laker or the Clippers and the OKC Thunder game?
Look, I know everyone's sort of talking about the strength of the Western Conference and what the depth of competition there is there, right? But no matter who comes out of the West, I just don't see anyone running through the Celtics, right? They got 5 guys that could be all-stars in their starting lineup, and they got arguably one of the better benches in the league right now. I just don't see anyone messing with them.
Yeah, the West is absolutely insane right now. It's starting to look like it's really just 11 teams that even can make the playoffs right now in the Western Conference, which is just kind of insane to say that with the play-in, it's just keeping so many teams competitive. I think the Jazz will kind of start to lean off, and I know the Rockets are struggling as well as of recently, but there's 10 teams there that I wouldn't say that are title contenders, but that all look very strong, that they could look like they can win a playoff series. And that's kind of crazy. I don't think there's ever been a time in NBA history that you can look at, the whole Western Conference standings and say that like all 8-9 teams in that, those teams could say, like, you can generally say, like, yeah, I think they're going to win a playoff series. Like, they have a good chance of winning a playoff series this year. That's absolutely insane to me. But I know, to go back to bounce off Nic's comment about he doesn't see anyone running through the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics look great. They have, the best. I mean, in the regular season, I think it's very important to state like how many threes a team is making. They lead the league in, threes and 3-point percentage. They lead the league in rebounding. Like, that's just great. I mean, Joe Mazzulla, I know he got a lot of smoke last year, but with the additions of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, I mean, they look like a great team. Derek White, I know, was getting some all-star love, and they're a great team. But I really don't think that. I think they're probably the second best team in basketball right now. I think the Denver Nuggets are just a sleeping dragon right now. They have those 5 guys of Murray, Jokic, KCP, Michael Porter Jr., and who is it? Oh, dunk contest, Aaron Gordon. That's the most used lineup in the NBA right now. Those 5 guys, Mike Malone really trusts those guys. And I think in a playoff series, those guys are going to be the most consistent. And I really think that the Denver Nuggets are still the title favorites, through 55 games this year.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Mason. As cliche or as the platitude goes, right, you got to go through the defending champs. In this case, even though they did lose some key pieces from their championship team through, from free agency, they still are arguably the most well-rounded team. And as they saw last year in the playoffs, right, they had great depth throughout the regular season. That depth is to get their starters or to get their 8-man rotation, their top 8 to the playoffs as healthy as possible. By then, Michael Malone had no problem literally just playing those same 8 guys, sometimes 7, all the way to the championship. I agree. I think I still, and not just because of last night's Celtics versus Knicks matchup, I still think, yes, the Celtics are the team to beat in the East, but I would say they would still struggle against Denver for the same reason. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so to contrast that, I think if they were to play tomorrow, single game, elimination series, right? I have Denver. Yeah, 10 times out of 10. Yeah. But if we're talking in a playoff scenario where the Nuggets have to run through a Western Conference, as stacked as that is, where they could, you could make the argument that every single series they play in is going to go to 7, right? And whereas if you look in the East, I don't see any team other than maybe the Bucks. Maybe there's a big question mark there for me at least. And if Joel Embiid can get healthy, maybe the 76ers. But I don't see anyone else giving them any kind of trouble. So I think the Celtics for me have a very easy path to the finals, whereas the Nuggets could very easily, as I said, play 7 games in every series. And with that, there's an increased chance of injury. There's fatigue. I just don't see it for the Nuggets at least, or anyone in the Western Conference. It's a massive sort of Achilles heel almost, just the strength of what you're gonna have to go through.
Okay, but before my technical difficulties, what was the question? We talking about
we were just
Western Conference teams.
like how viable are the top teams in each conference to actually make it, you know, deep playoff run to the finals.
And you guys were picking teams. Yeah, it's boring to say that, but Denver's ready. I mean, Jokic is arguably like the best. He's the best player in the league. I'm high on Dallas, and I like the Celtics as well. I actually like the Knicks, but yeah. Dallas is just, I don't know, man. Like once the playoffs come, have everything that's required for you to get through a 7-game series. So you know what I mean? The other teams have to figure it out because they have new pieces that have become a part of it. For the Celtics, like Porzingis and Drew Holiday, even though I'm sure that'll translate well. And for the Knicks, like they just got like 4 new players from the beginning of the season through trade deadline. So we'll see what happens with that too. And then I want to see what Philly looks like when Embiid comes back too.
I did sort of fail to mention the Knicks, sort of with the Celtics in the East. I don't, as much as I sort of have talked a lot about, I believe the Knicks are a contender, right? I just, as high as I am on the Knicks, and I'm way higher on them than the sort of consensus is, at least I think so. I just don't see them running through, having any sort of chance in a 7-game against the Celtics. I mean, the number one thing that the Knicks have going for them is their depth, right? They got 9 guys who can go out there, put the ball on the floor, and get you a bucket, right?
Yes.
On the other end, play defense.
Yeah,
the only other team in the league
so
that does
I would
that
disagree.
is the Celtics.
I would disagree. They do not have 9 guys that can do both of those things.
Maybe not 9.
They have 4 guys that can do one, and 5 guys can do the other. They have too many one-dimensional players. And the Celtics.
I'd say they have a lot of sort of
yes, they did.
guys that can shoot and play defense.
No. Your ability to catch and shoot is not an ability to create. And that's what happens in the playoffs.
That's fair. Yeah.
When you can actually isolate a guy and he can't actually do anything, no. And that's exactly what happened last night. Now, again, that's a 1-game sample size. And I'll acknowledge that Randall and OG Anunoby were
that's
absent.
why the Celtics coming out, yeah.
But that's exactly what happens. You reference Bogdanovic. He's a guy that will help you if you have like a tied game or if you're playing with a lead. Because go ahead, guns a-blazing. But when you're playing from behind, especially, he is a massive defensive liability. He's not going to get you any stops, you know? That's the thing about them. Their best defensive players cannot handle the ball at all, right? And no offense to Anunoby, sure, he can make the basic, screen assist, dribble handoff. But I mean, the same thing. That's what happens when he was with the Raptors, right? When they sag off and they let him try to go 1-4 flat, he's not going to do anything, right? He's just running into a crowd.
You don't think Josh Hart's a good defender or Dante DiVincenzo? I think they care on the other side.
No. Again, see, it's not that they aren't. It's that when you really lack high-level two-way ability, that is what gets exposed in the playoffs. And that is the thing I think with the Knicks, which is why I'm not as high on them, is that a lot of them, they're very good complementary pieces. It's the same thing with DiVincenzo. And again, not to be biased because I was like a Warrior fan and he was with us, but that's what happens like last year. You know, you start to see that when they really start to blitz a team's primary guys, you know, they did last night with like Brunson and everything. And now he's actually asked to like create an isolation. It's not really going anywhere, you know? So I'm not as high on them.
Yeah.
And even going back to what Michael said, when you start to look at which teams have all the pieces, I don't think the Celtics have all the pieces. They definitely do not.
What are they missing?
I think their biggest piece that they're missing, that a lot of teams are actually missing, and that's why I just not just the Celtics, a lot of them, is a big that can actually defend in space. They don't have one at all. You can maybe make an argument Horford. And so again, right, like I kind of thought to myself, like, what was it? And that would be my biggest weakness with the Clippers too, right? Is a big that can defend in space. And as like we were getting ready for this
Do the
pod,
thinking.
I was starting to think like who could that be? And ideally, and I will bring this back to the Celtics, but for the Clippers, I think the Clippers and the Celtics have the same problem, right? A big man that can defend in space. Because ultimately, again, half court sets in the playoffs, right? A lot like teams will increase their volume of pick and roll. And right, do you really have a big that can defend those ball handlers out beyond the perimeter? Right.
The Hornets do.
Yeah, okay. Maybe in 2026 that'll be useful. But we're talking about right the 2024 playoffs.
Sorry.
No. But like, here's the funny thing, right? I was thinking like, who could that guy be like on the Clippers? There's only one guy who like the best version of himself could do it, and that's PJ Tucker, right?
He doesn't even want to be there.
Exactly. Well, right. I'm like, and so I started like getting nostalgic. I'm like, is this like what the Spurs did with Robert Horry, where they made us believe he was washed up every year, and then he was like the Winter Soldier. They like brought him out of cryogenic stasis just for the playoffs, and he balled out. Like maybe PJ Tucker can pull that off. I don't know, right? But that's what I'm thinking about the Celtics.
I mean, he does it though. I mean, he every year sort of fights those sort of allegations of just being one of those, those. I mean, I know this isn't very relevant to sort of basketball, but one of those guys that people sort of think that they can beat in 1v1. One of those NBA players that people always claim that they can beat in 1v1. I've seen a lot of that, similar to sort of Brian Scalabrine. But every single year in the playoffs, he's sort of proven his value, sort of, especially on the defensive end. Like I remember specifically his run with the Bucks, how massive he was in shutting down KD in that series. I don't think they win that championship without him.
All right, and I know we're now 3 years removed from that, and that this is one of the segment, not to just make it about PJ Tucker, but that's what I'm saying. Like we're trying to search now because the rosters are what they are, right? I mean, barring buyout additions, we have to start kind of looking at how can these teams really maximize the players they have on their rosters, and how do you kind of envision them matching up against fellow elite playoff contenders. And I'm not actually saying that's what I believe the Clippers are doing, but that's the type, right? If you actually had a younger or in his prime, I don't even know if PJ Tucker's washed. He barely plays, but right, like that's the type of guy I'd say the Clippers need. It's not necessarily that type of guy or build, but it's something that I think the Celtics definitely lack and can be exposed. And so
yeah, I think the Celtics do have. I do agree with you. I won't push back on that flaw, but I do think the Celtics are probably the second best team in the NBA. And to go off Nick's point previously, I do think they have a really easy path to the finals right now. I mean, the Bucks, that the new coaching change with Doc Rivers, I know they've kind of struggled, and I mean that's going to be hard. They've basically gone through 3 coaches in the span of the year, and the Knicks, they're kind of the young team, and they're who knows. I'm not a Randall guy. I don't really love Randall when it comes to the postseason. And I could see, there could be a lot of, egos on that Knicks team. And then they're vocal guys. I think that a playoff series could go really bad and that locker room could just break down. So I would probably agree with Nick that, I mean, the Celtics kind of have a path. I mean, there are still tighter contenders in the Eastern Conference, but I was looking at the easiest schedules going on, and the Boston Celtics actually have the easiest remaining schedule. And I know they need to find another big guy that they can, help defend. And maybe the buyout doesn't come out, but I just have a feeling that the Boston Celtics will be 100% healthy when they're going into the playoffs. They're going to be able to rest their guys. They're going to be able to coast through the remaining season. I don't even know how many games they have between I think the gap between them and second place is like bigger than the place of like in the Western Conference where like the Timberwolves have over like the 8th seed in the Western Conference. Like it's a big gap. The Boston Celtics have they have an easy cushion to go through. So I think the Boston Celtics are definitely the best team coming out of the Eastern Conference, which I agree they have flaws, but I think they really have an easy coast to agree with Nic Thomas. They can get to the finals. And Mike, what do you think about that? Like, besides the Nuggets, who you think has the second best team? Who's the second best team? Not if it's the Boston Celtics, okay, but in the Western Conference, who has the second best chance of making the finals?
That's a good question. Should I be biased?
Pistons?
That's tough. I would say, oh no, hell no. I would say the Warriors and the Mavericks, actually. I don't think the Timberwolves have enough experience to just get all the way through the playoffs yet. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna go with Luka because he's been there. Kyrie because he's been there. The Warriors, and no one else comes to mind. So I don't know. Unless OKC surprises us and suddenly they're the reiteration of the baby Warriors. You know what I mean? So
you say Kyrie's been there, but Kyrie's been there like 9 years ago. Like it's been a while since Kyrie's done anything meaningful in the playoffs. I mean,
it's been no fault of his own though. I mean, he was injured for a number of those runs.
I mean, Nets. He went with the Celtics.
What do you guys think
about
the
Celtics?
Heat?
So yeah, I mean, actually, it's
I love the Heat.
It's kind of funny you say. Yes, I know Michael loves the Heat, and that's actually why I wanted to.
Michael doesn't discriminate.
Kind of wanted to kind of touch upon these potential paths. I don't disagree. I think, relatively speaking, the Celtics. I mean, they're likely going to be the number 1 seed, so they potentially have the easiest path to the NBA Finals. But in that path to the NBA Finals, as it stands now, they would play the Heat in the first round. In terms of, again, the idealized version of themselves, what Michael said, which teams actually have all the necessary pieces to get you to the finish line? I'm talking about the idealized version, the healthiest version of themselves. The Heat do. I think the Heat do. And for the Heat to have to play, for the Celtics to have to play the Heat in the first round, I'm sorry, styles make fights, right? These cliches are cliches for a reason, okay? Because there's truth behind it. And in this case, I think, yes, from an experience and a coaching perspective, they have an advantage over the Celtics. And it's just, it's also even the past iterations of the Sixers, they just do not match up well with Miami. Boston does not match up well with Miami either, So why do you think that is, Michael?
I think it's like you said, it's Eric Spoelstra, it's Jimmy Butler, it's Bam. They've already had the I guess matchups in the playoffs multiple times. Or maybe I'm thinking about Miami and Milwaukee, but Miami is just built for the playoffs, to be honest. Since Jimmy Butler has arrived, they've been built literally for whatever regular season, whatever, all right, playoffs. Because it seems like them and the Lakers, they do all of that little playing around during the season. Then here comes February, and then it's like, okay, it's time to start punching you in the mouth. Okay, now we're playing our best basketball going into the playoffs, and suddenly we're in the conference finals, each team. You know what I mean? And the Heat is that, and them adding Terry Rozier gave them another offensive punch per se, and then they have Tyler Hero healthy this time around. You know what I mean? So let's see what happens. But I'm loving that Heat pick because I think, honestly, the surprise team outside of for me, being, my surprise team was the Knicks, but it would be the Heat again because people are like, oh, they're playing trash. And then here comes May, and it's like, oh, the Heat are here. Like, yeah, they are.
Yeah, and to be fair, they have an opportunity. They seem to be kind of finding their rhythm. They have an opportunity to kind of climb their way up the standings, maybe get themselves out of the play-in picture.
They have the sixth easiest remaining schedule right now.
There you go.
So, and they're only a half a game behind Indiana right now. So I think they could.
Nice.
I think it's very
Yeah.
possible that they
So
can.
yeah,
The
I
sixth
mean, they
spot.
can get themselves out of the play-in or whatever play-in tournament, and not face the Celtics in the first round. But in terms of like like I said, these are the playoff contenders of each conference. There are some down the road. There is the potential for a matchup, and for everything that I was saying earlier, Miami. It comes down to one of my favorite players in the league. It comes down to Bam Adebayo, right? Everything that I said those other teams lack, that's exactly what Miami has. And not only can he defend in space or be a drop rim protector, right? But he is legitimately a playmaker. People kind of forget that, before Jimmy Butler arrived in Miami, they actually ran the offense through him, through Bam. And that's what I'm saying. You have that kind of two-way potential, right? You have less of those kind of like lulls in a playoff series, where you have to value every possession. A guy like Bam kind of ensures, right, that we can kind of keep it rolling, So,
what do you guys think about the Cavs? I mean, I've seen next to sort of no conversation around them, just generally across media, and across sort of social media as well. Especially considering the fact that they're the 2 seed at the moment, and they've been one of the hottest teams in the league since the start of the new year. What do you guys think about the Cavs?
Nick, I think that's a fantastic thing that you point out. The Cavs are definitely they're hot. I think they've gone on a crazy stretch recently. I don't know the exact games, but like that winning streak was they're red hot. Yeah, they're red hot. They're second in the East right now. But I think the question comes down to about what do you think about the Cavs is like really narrows down to what do you think about Donovan Mitchell? Donovan Mitchell, he had a bad postseason last year. Like that whole team did not look like they even knew what the playoffs were. They all look like a team of rookies. Donovan Mitchell just does not defend well, and I'm a Donovan Mitchell guy. I really do like Donovan Mitchell in the regular season, but the postseason, last postseason and the year before, it looks like he just wants nowhere to be near those small market teams and the Jazz and the Cavs. He looks like he wants out right now, and I really do think that this year is his last year in Cleveland. Yeah, I know maybe I'm jumping the gun right there, but I think it's the worst kept secret in the NBA. Like I think he wants out, and I love Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. But I think almost kind of like Gobert thing, they're going to be great at defense, but I think they're going to be a liability. They don't look aggressive enough when they have the basketball to score. I don't know, and I don't think they could be able to create their own shots. And I think that's going to be a problem with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Darius Garland has had a really brutal season with his jaw injury, and he doesn't look like the same Garland as last year. He kind of looks a little bit passive, and things just aren't falling. So I think the Cavs are a hot team in the regular season, but I think in the postseason we're going to see a lot of the same struggles as we did see last year. Nick, what's your thoughts on that? Are you Donovan Mitchell believer? Do you have a lot of stock in him?
Look, I mean, I think that he's shown some capacity to perform in the playoffs previously, but so the main thing that I'm thinking about in regards to the Cavaliers is less about this postseason and more about what they're doing this offseason. I'm a big believer in. I've been a huge Jared Allen fan, right? Ever since he came in the league, I loved him on the Nets. He was always like one of those guys that I sort of followed around the league, always kept an eye on. But I think it's time to sort of end this double big experiment. I don't think it works in playoffs.
You think you're already out on him? Like before the season even ends, you don't think it's going to work already?
No. I mean, maybe last season was an outlier, but they've shown no capacity to make this work in a playoff environment. But more than anything, I mean, even if it does work, I still think it needs to end because Jared Allen right now is impeding on Evan Mobley's growth more than anything. And right now, Evan Mobley is the most important asset to that team more than anything, right? Donovan Mitchell, he could be gone in a year. Darius Garland, there's been interest from other teams. He could be anywhere 2-3 years from now. Evan Mobley is the only guy that they have genuine control over for a long period of time and is an a really high-level prospect, right? That's sort of maybe not you can build your team around, but it's one of those foundational franchise guys, right? One of those core pieces you plan your future around. And having Jared Allen around is restricting that. And I don't think Evan Mobley has any capacity in the future, and even previously hasn't shown any capacity to play the 4. And I just think it's best for all parties involved to just sort of move off Jared Allen.
That's
Well, he'll have plenty of suitors, that's for sure.
Yeah. He was damn near an all-star.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll speak on behalf of Dub Nation, man. We would love him, man.
So after this postseason, he has 2 more years under contract, making $20 million each year after the following. So
I mean, it's fantastic value. Fantastic value.
But he was only. I mean, there was conversations that he could have been an all-star this year. But I mean, I agree. I don't think the Cavs formula is going to work. But I think it would be hard. I think it would be hard for me to get rid of Jared Allen if he was on my team.
I mean, but when was the last time we saw this double big lineup work in the playoffs? Like, I'm asking this a genuine question. I can't think. I've been trying to think during this conversation about any immediate sort of examples that come to mind. I can't think of.
I agree. I don't believe. I don't believe in them.
Not in that way. Like I would say, okay. At first, I was just gonna get cute.
Sorry, not to check, but when I mean double big, I mean 2 bigs that also can't shoot the ball.
Yeah, no, I was following that with it's no.
That's the problem. If Evan Mobley was shooting 35-36% from 3 right now, I wouldn't be talking, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we're on the same page. But I think I would hesitate if I was the Cavs GM, just to pull the trigger, especially if Donovan Mitchell could be out of the door. Like, to lose both of them, that would be very hard to do. But I guess that's a decision that the Cavaliers will probably have to be talking about this summer.
I mean, I'm the opposite. If I'm the GM right now, I'm pulling the trigger on all the deals. Right, I'm hitting not a hard reset, but more of a retool around maybe Darius Garland. I don't know how they sort of feel about him in the front office. I know there's, as I said before, there's interest around the league. I believe the Bulls were interested in him at one point around the deadline, but sort of I don't feel like this experiment's going to work out with the squad they have now. As I said, Jared Allen, I believe he needs to go, and with Jared Allen going, I don't believe you're going to get the suitors that are going to want Jared Allen aren't also going to be able to give up a piece that's going to help you get to contend right now. You're going to get future assets. You're going to get, salary filler, in my opinion, because I feel like the only teams that are going to be interested in him are teams that are already contending, right? I feel like it's time to just bite the bullet on the Donovan Mitchell trade. You gave up a lot to get him. It didn't work. It's gotten you nowhere so far. Maybe it gets you somewhere this offseason. But even if it does get you somewhere this playoff run, it's not going to, unless it's a championship, I just don't see it being worth it. I think it's time to bite the bullet, ship him off to wherever, and that's not important, just wherever you get the best deal. And just sort of, you don't even you would be aiming to get as many draft picks as possible. If I'm the Cavs, not to use, I don't believe they're at the point of still needing to draft young talent. I think they're past that point, but I think sort of similarly to what the 76ers did at the start of the season with the James Harden trade. They got those first-round picks. I highly doubt they're going to use them, but maybe in the future they can use those packaged with some salary and maybe get some guys that they actually really need.
Yeah. I mean,
doesn't that set the Cavs back though? Like, what can they get back?
Yeah, but I don't feel like they're going anywhere with this roster anyway.
Like Kobe White. I don't.
I don't know. Or my opinion is just that this isn't going to work. You do have some pieces that could work on you could build around to make a championship level team. I mean, you have the pieces here. It's just that this current iteration isn't working, and maybe it does set them back, right? But I feel like in the future, 2-3 years from now, that's going to be looked back on as a positive. That was the right thing to do, right? Because the ceiling with this team, in my opinion, isn't as high as it should be for a team that has given up as much as they have, right? They've got all their future assets, everything. It's all gone, right? They're not. I don't consider them. I mean, they're the 2 seed right now. I don't consider them a contender, and I don't believe there's many out there that really consider them a bona fide contender, and that's why no one's really talking about it, right? So
Yeah.
Their seeding's good, but the ceiling, I don't see them being much more than a second, maybe a very, very, very best third round team. And if that, as I said, if you've given up that much, you want your ceiling to be a championship level team, right? So if it sets them back a few years, you just got to raise that ceiling.
Overall, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. However, the only reason why I think they don't have a championship level ceiling is not so much their front court, but their back court. In the sense that, like, I don't really like to compare current players to current players, but it is recent, just a recent memory. No. The problems that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland face are the same problems that Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum faced on Portland. You can't have two, like, both
small undersized
guards be like defensive liabilities, right? And then like the perimeter is completely exposed. An idealized version of it is like one of them is transformed into like more 6'6", kind of actual ball stopping guard, shooter. I mean, they don't just grow on trees, but right, like a prime Klay Thompson, right? At least I wouldn't. I mean, there'll be plenty of time, obviously, for every team to kind of retool themselves in the offseason. But I mean, just because the picks are gone does not mean the assets are gone. Bird rights are just as important, or if not more valuable than assets. And in a league right now that is not flush with cap space anymore, I mean, the team retaining those bird rights to, facilitate a sign and trade and everything like that. So, I mean, there's still an opportunity for them to maximize, not just having to maximize by way of, trying to recruit draft assets. I think they still can actually get, good players down the road. But as it pertains to this season, I mean, I really did not know how long Garland and Mobley were going to be out. Even if they were out longer, I thought like, okay, the Cavs could kind of tread water. They've done more than tread water. I think they've had an absolutely fantastic season. They've been really impressive. And I get what you're saying, Nick, about the kind of like so far the limitations of the Mobley, Jarrett Allen front court. And I do agree. However, I think part of what has not necessarily stifled that potential or the development of Mobley isn't necessarily pairing him with Allen, but really the limitations of what they're doing as it relates to the backcourt, right? Given that, because Mobley is actually, and even Allen, especially out of the low post, Mobley and Allen are very good passers for big men. That is not really, they don't really get to maximize or to really show that, because Garland and Mitchell, they're not being ball hogs, but they are, right? They are the ball dominant players on any given lineup. So, like I said, it could be addition by subtraction, but not necessarily splitting them, but we'll see. But, for all these giants, you say in the East, like physically, big men, I mean, they are as suited as any team to at least, put up a fight.
I do think it's fair to be noted
not
that
a literal fight, Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah.
Okay. But, I mean,
no, yeah.
Right,
when the Cavs started to wrap it up real quick, for any Cavs fan out there in their defense, when they did get on this hot streak, it was when Garland and Mobley were injured.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
I mean, Donovan Mitchell is very particular in how he wants to run things, and things worked out. And obviously, this postseason will be a huge one for the Cavs. But I think it's fair to say that all four of us are kind of out on the Cavs kind of early. But let's keep it going. Nick, what was your next question you had to ask?
Oh, well, no, it was sort of on that note. I think we should start to wrap it up. Thanks for listening, and I will get you next time.
all right.